There is a quiet ache that follows some men into their 40s, 50s, even 60s. It is not the ache of regret or lost time. It is something less dramatic, but far more persistent. It is the subtle sense that life has somehow remained unfinished, as if they have been waiting for something to begin, some unseen initiation into adulthood that never came. Their bodies grow older, responsibilities pile up, the world expects maturity, but something within them never truly catches up. You might have seen it in the man who avoids accountability with a joke, in the one who clings to youthful dreams but never brings them into reality, or the man who feels overwhelmed by the smallest of emotional responsibilities. He can be charming, imaginative, even brilliant, but something inside remains fragile, unformed. You sense it in his relationships, in his career, in his relationship to time itself, as if he is caught in a long pause. This is the figure we explore today, the man-child, not as a meme, not as a stereotype, but as a very real, very human condition, one that is often misunderstood, mocked, or dismissed, yet deeply rooted in our psychology, our culture, and even our mythology. The idea of the eternal boy is not new. The Greeks called him Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth. In their stories, he showed up as Narcissus, gazing into his own reflection, as Icarus, flying too close to the sun. In Jungian psychology, this archetype was not seen as merely immature, but as a powerful psychic force, beautiful, creative, but also dangerous if left unchecked. And today, in a world of extended adolescence, shifting rites of passage and emotional confusion, the man-child is not just a personal failure. He is also a symptom of broken systems, of absent fathers, of lost initiation rituals, and of a society that glorifies youth but rarely teaches men how to grow. This video is not about blame. It is about understanding. It is about asking, what does it really mean to become a man? What does maturity require, not just externally but internally, spiritually, and psychologically? Through the lens of Carl Jung, modern psychology, and timeless human stories, we will explore why some men never grow up, and, more importantly, what can be done about it. Whether you see yourself in this journey or someone you care about, I invite you to step into this exploration with openness, not to judge, but to see, to understand, and maybe to begin again. To understand the man-child, we have to go back, not just decades, but centuries, because this is not simply a modern glitch. It is an ancient pattern, a soul story that has appeared across generations, under different names, in different forms, but always with the same haunting rhythm: the refusal or inability to cross the invisible threshold between boyhood and manhood. In ancient societies, the line between childhood and adulthood was not vague. It was sharp, symbolic, and sometimes brutal. A boy was not simply expected to drift into manhood. He was pulled into it through trials, tests, and ceremonies that were both physical and psychological. Among the Maasai of Kenya, a young boy could not become a warrior until he proved his courage in the face of danger. Among many Native American tribes, vision quests were used to confront the boy with solitude and the sacred. In ancient Sparta, boys were taken from their mothers at age 7 and forged into soldiers by the state. These rituals were not random. They served a deep psychological function. They broke the boy's dependence on comfort and forced him into confrontation with fear, suffering, and responsibility. More importantly, they gave him a map, a story of who he was becoming and why. In many cultures, this was not just about proving strength. It was about integration, learning to face one's shadow, to regulate one's impulses, to find inner stillness in the face of chaos. Carl Jung, reflecting on the psyche, would later call these initiations a kind of death and rebirth. The boy must die so that the man may live. Without that symbolic death, the boy lives on, inside the adult body, confused, wounded, and often acting out. But what happens when these rituals disappear? When no elder leads the boy through the dark forest of uncertainty? When no one marks the transition with meaning? The answer is what we see today. A culture flooded with men who never left the boy behind, because no one showed them how. In modern Western society, the loss of initiation rites has been profound. Industrialization severed the family bond. The father figure, once present in the field or the workshop, was often replaced by long hours and absence. Education shifted from mentorship to mass instruction. Spirituality, once deeply communal, became increasingly personal or institutionalized. And as the world leaned toward progress, it also abandoned the slow, sacred art of teaching boys how to become men. The result? A prolonged adolescence, a spiritual suspension. Many men today report a strange limbo. They are no longer boys, yet they do not feel like men either. They have jobs, partners, and responsibilities, but internally they still feel lost, unanchored. There is a longing for meaning, for guidance, for inner strength, but no clear path. The rise of the man-child is not merely about irresponsibility. It is about spiritual homelessness. A boy grows up in a culture that teaches him how to win, how to perform, how to succeed, but rarely how to suffer with dignity, how to fail gracefully, how to love with vulnerability, or how to hold space for his own emotional chaos without collapsing. This was not always the case. Even in the West, earlier centuries preserved forms of initiation through religion, apprenticeship, and military service. A young man often had to face moral codes, physical labor, and communal expectations. His place in society came with burdens, but also with belonging. With the rise of consumerism and modern entertainment, however, a new kind of boyhood emerged, one that never truly ends. Modern media glorifies the rebel, the joker, the eternal bachelor. Movies and TV celebrate the emotionally stunted man as lovable, quirky, or even heroic. The sensitive, self-aware, grounded male is often ignored, mocked, or portrayed as boring. And slowly, a new story took hold. Maturity is optional. Carl Jung warned of this danger in the archetype of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth. This is the man who resists grounding, who flees from responsibility, and who lives in fantasy rather than reality. He fears limitation. He fears boredom. He longs for freedom, but he cannot endure the weight of it. In many ways, he is deeply gifted, intuitive, creative, idealistic, but he struggles to translate his potential into something stable. Jung contrasted this with the archetype of the senex, the wise old man, the mature masculine. The senex values structure, order, wisdom, and responsibility. But here is the twist. We all carry both within us. The goal is not to reject the youth, but to integrate him, to let his imagination and spirit serve a deeper purpose. When the pure refuses to mature, he becomes toxic. But when he is guided by the senex, he becomes visionary. The problem is that in modern culture, we rarely offer young men this guidance. Boys are raised in emotionally disconnected homes, often without present fathers or healthy male mentors. Emotional literacy is absent. Vulnerability is shamed. Anger becomes the only acceptable emotion, and so the boy learns to hide, to escape, to perform. Some become addicted to video games or porn, not because they are lazy, but because they are lost. These digital worlds offer the illusion of control, progress, and adventure. Others chase careers or social status with obsessive intensity, still driven by the unconscious need to prove their worth to absent fathers or indifferent cultures. And others simply detach. They drift through life, numb, passive, silently hoping that someone else will save them from themselves. What all these men share is a deep wound, a broken initiation, a longing for something they cannot name. And yet, even now, this story does not have to end in tragedy. Jung believed that the psyche is always seeking wholeness. The man-child, if he becomes aware, can begin his own journey into adulthood, not through shame, but through conscious self-reflection. That journey begins by understanding where he came from, not just his personal history, but the collective story that shaped him. You see, in every myth, the hero begins as a child, naive, dependent, unformed. What makes him a hero is not strength. It is the willingness to grow, to face the unknown, to transform. The man-child is not a failure. He is a hero whose story has not yet begun, or perhaps has only just begun. To understand the deeper layers of why some men never grow up, we must explore the psychological and social forces at play, forces that have shaped not only the individual, but the collective psyche over time. As much as we might want to view the man-child through the lens of laziness, immaturity, or irresponsibility, the issue runs far deeper. It's about identity, the clash of inner archetypes, and the lack of supportive structures to guide a man through life's complex emotional terrain. The Jungian lens, the archetype of the Puer Aeternus. Carl Jung's exploration of the Puer Aeternus, the eternal youth, provides a fascinating psychological framework for understanding the man-child. Jung recognized that every human psyche carries a complex interplay of both masculine and feminine energies, and that within the masculine psyche specifically, there are archetypes that shape the way a man develops throughout his life. The Puer is one of those archetypes, embodying the youthful, creative, and free-spirited aspects of the psyche. However, Jung also warned that the Puer can be both a source of inspiration and a source of stagnation. When allowed to dominate the psyche without balance, the Puer prevents a man from maturing emotionally and mentally. The Puer fears the inevitability of aging, fears the loss of freedom, and fears being trapped in roles and responsibilities. This archetype, in its negative form, can lead to a life of flightiness, irresponsibility, and emotional immaturity. The Puer is not inherently negative. In fact, it is the Puer that fuels creativity, curiosity, and the desire to explore the unknown. Think of the childlike wonder that sparks invention, or the youthful idealism that drives social movements. These qualities are vital. But when the Puer resists growth, when it becomes a defense mechanism against fear or pain, the man becomes stuck. He cannot fully engage with the reality of life, and so he remains a boy in a man's body. This is the man-child's dilemma. He has the potential to be something extraordinary, but he resists the very forces of change and development that will allow him to fully embody his power and potential. Jung's advice would be to integrate the Puer, to let the creative, unrestrained spirit of the eternal youth find its place within the greater structure of mature adulthood. Modern psychology, emotional immaturity and avoidance. Building on Jung's archetypal framework, modern psychology offers some crucial insights into emotional immaturity and the psychological avoidance that perpetuates the man-child phenomenon. One of the key aspects of emotional immaturity is avoidance behavior, a pattern of avoiding difficult emotions, situations, or responsibilities. Many men who are trapped in a perpetual state of boyhood suffer from an inability to confront and regulate their emotions. When faced with discomfort or stress, they flee to more comfortable states: video games, substance abuse, unhealthy relationships, or mindless consumption of entertainment. This avoidance is a coping mechanism that arises from an inner sense of fragility. The man-child often does not know how to deal with his own emotional turmoil, so he distracts himself rather than face the discomfort. In psychological terms, this is a form of emotional regression, a retreat to the safety of childhood when the demands of adulthood feel too overwhelming. Furthermore, this emotional immaturity can manifest in relationships. Men who refuse to grow up often struggle with emotional intimacy. They may resist commitment or evade meaningful conversations about feelings. This pattern is especially damaging in romantic relationships, where the emotional vulnerability required for deep connection is absent. The man-child seeks to maintain the illusion of independence, but in doing so, he sacrifices true intimacy, which requires both maturity and emotional risk. The key issue here is that emotional maturity is not simply about growing up in the traditional sense of becoming more responsible or independent. Emotional maturity is about becoming comfortable with complexity. It involves the willingness to confront difficult emotions such as fear, guilt, shame, and grief, rather than avoiding them. It requires the strength to face life's challenges and the humility to accept imperfection. In the man-child, emotional avoidance keeps him stuck in an infantile state, unable to form the deeper connections that lead to personal and relational fulfillment. Yet, this pattern can be broken. Emotional maturity is not a given. It must be cultivated with intention, patience, and guidance. The societal pressures. Youth and masculinity. Modern society plays an undeniable role in the proliferation of the man-child. Today's culture exalts youth in a way that is both unrealistic and damaging. Youth is seen as synonymous with beauty, vitality, freedom, and creativity, qualities that in many ways are celebrated as the essence of life. In contrast, aging and maturity are often seen as burdensome. The message is clear: youth is good, age is bad. This cultural idealization of youth feeds into the psyche of many men, causing them to fear aging, responsibility, and stability. Many men grow up with the unconscious belief that they must remain youthful and carefree in order to be valuable. This is particularly evident in advertising and media, where older men are often portrayed as irrelevant, out of touch, or over the hill. The message is reinforced by the rise of forever young trends, cosmetic surgery, anti-aging products, and a youth-oriented job market that rewards appearance and energy over wisdom and experience. At the same time, the traditional markers of manhood, fatherhood, leadership, stability, are often seen as less glamorous. Masculinity, as it has been historically defined, is under scrutiny. Today, S-Man is not only struggling with personal immaturity, but is also faced with a shifting cultural landscape that has blurred the boundaries between youthful exuberance and adult responsibility. This tension between the ideal of youth and the reality of growing older is a key driver behind the man-child's avoidance of maturation. The more society pushes for youthful energy, the more the man-child clings to the fantasy that he can defy aging, that he can remain young forever. Yet this idealization is ultimately hollow. Youth is fleeting. Without a deeper sense of self and purpose, the pursuit of eternal youth only leads to emptiness. The shadow of the man-child. The fear of responsibility. Underlying the man-child's resistance to adulthood is often a deeper, more existential fear. The fear of responsibility. Responsibility is not just about taking care of bills and holding down a job. It is about the psychological burden of becoming who you truly are. It is the pressure of defining your identity, making difficult decisions, and living with the consequences of those decisions. This fear of responsibility can take many forms, from commitment phobia in relationships to a reluctance to make long-term plans or engage in meaningful work. The man-child's reluctance to take on responsibility often masks a fear of failure or inadequacy. He fears that if he commits, he will be judged, criticized, or, worse, discovered as not being capable. This fear is linked to an immature sense of self-worth, one that has not yet fully accepted the reality of imperfection. The man-child, like all of us, carries deep vulnerabilities and insecurities. But instead of confronting them, he avoids them, clinging to the illusion of youth and freedom. Interestingly, this fear of responsibility is often unconscious. The man-child may convince himself that he simply does not want the responsibilities that come with adulthood, but deeper down, he may fear being judged by others, or perhaps judged by himself. His resistance is not a statement of disinterest, but a defensive mechanism that keeps his deeper anxieties at bay. When we talk about the man-child, it's important to recognize that there is an inherent tension between the adult self and the inner child. The inner child is not just some childish part of you that is better left behind. Rather, it's an essential part of your psychological makeup, one that contains not only your most playful, carefree qualities, but also your deepest wounds, fears, and unmet needs from childhood. The relationship between the inner child and maturity is complex. Many men who struggle with the man-child mentality are, in a sense, trapped between their grown-up responsibilities and the emotional needs left unmet from childhood. In this sense, growing up is not just about taking on adult responsibilities. It's about reconciling these two parts of yourself, the adult that must engage with the world and the child that still yearns for the safety, care, and acceptance it did not receive. The inner child is a reflection of the experiences, messages, and emotional patterns you internalized during your formative years. These experiences shaped how you perceive yourself and the world, influencing how you respond to stress, failure, and relationships today. Whether you grew up in an emotionally neglectful home, experienced trauma, or had parents who weren't equipped to teach you emotional regulation, your inner child can carry wounds that manifest in your adult life as immaturity, fear of commitment, or an inability to handle responsibility. In the context of the man-child, the unresolved wounds of the inner child often lead to an emotional stuntedness. For example, a man who grew up in an emotionally distant home might now avoid confrontations and suppress his feelings, unable to communicate effectively with others. Alternatively, he might seek constant validation or act impulsively when faced with emotional challenges, mirroring the unmet needs of his childhood. Healing the inner child. One of the first steps in transforming the man-child mentality is healing the inner child. This involves acknowledging the wounds of your past, validating the feelings that were once ignored or repressed, and learning to provide yourself with the love, care, and compassion that you were denied. Healing the inner child does not mean reverting to a state of perpetual childhood or avoiding adult responsibilities. Rather, it means giving yourself the emotional tools and support necessary to integrate the child's needs with the mature, responsible adult you are becoming. Therapeutic practices like inner child work can help you connect with this younger part of yourself. This work may involve reflecting on your childhood, engaging in dialogues with your younger self, or visualizing yourself as a child and offering that version of you the love and validation they needed at the time. By allowing yourself to feel the emotions of your past, you begin to break the patterns of emotional avoidance that contribute to immaturity. Another powerful tool for healing the inner child is self-compassion. Many men who struggle with growing up are also their harshest critics. The shame they carry from their childhood, whether it's from feeling abandoned, inadequate, or unloved, gets projected onto their adult selves. In learning to treat yourself with compassion, you begin to ease the burden of that shame, enabling the healing process to take root. It's important to remember that healing the inner child is not a quick fix. It's a lifelong process that requires ongoing care, understanding, and reflection. But as you gradually repair the wounds of the past, you create a more integrated, mature version of yourself. A version that no longer hides from responsibility or sabotages its own growth. The role of the father figure in maturity. One of the central psychological elements that Carl Jung emphasized in his work was the importance of the archetypal father figure in the development of a mature adult. According to Jung, the father is not just a biological or social role, he is a symbolic figure representing authority, guidance, and structure. The absence or failure of the father figure can have profound consequences on a man's emotional development. In the case of the man-child, a missing or ineffective father figure may leave a void in a man's life that he struggles to fill. Without a model for what it means to be a mature, responsible adult, the man-child often finds himself caught in a cycle of immaturity, lacking the emotional structure to step into the full responsibility of adulthood. The father, in Jungian terms, also represents the capacity for self-discipline and the ability to set boundaries. A well-developed father archetype in the psyche provides a sense of inner authority, a sense that one is able to assert themselves in the world with confidence and conviction. In the absence of this archetype, men often struggle with boundaries, constantly seeking approval or avoiding conflict, unable to trust their own judgment. For men who didn't have a strong or present father figure, the process of developing this inner authority can be slow and difficult. But it is possible. One way to begin developing this part of the psyche is by recognizing the importance of self-discipline and inner strength. Like the father archetype, self-discipline offers guidance in times of indecision. It's about setting firm, realistic goals and taking deliberate steps toward achieving them, regardless of temporary discomfort or fear. Therapy and mentorship can also play an important role in cultivating the father archetype within oneself. Mentors, whether male or female, can provide the guidance, wisdom, and structure that the father figure represents. By surrounding yourself with people who hold you accountable, provide emotional support, and challenge you to grow, you can begin to internalize these qualities and develop a more balanced, mature version of yourself. From man-child to sovereign man. Ultimately, the process of growing up is about embracing sovereignty, the ability to govern oneself. This involves taking full responsibility for every aspect of your life, not just your actions, but your thoughts, emotions, and reactions. The sovereign man recognizes that his life is his own creation. He does not allow external circumstances, past wounds, or fears to dictate his decisions. Instead, he becomes the ruler of his own emotional world, making choices that align with his deepest values and long-term goals. This sovereignty does not come from brute force or rigid control. It comes from emotional integration, self-awareness, and the courage to face difficult truths. The sovereign man is emotionally mature, secure in his own sense of identity, and fully engaged in life. He no longer runs from responsibility or shies away from emotional discomfort, but meets each challenge with strength, vulnerability, and an open heart. The path to becoming this sovereign man is not easy, but it is the most rewarding journey you can take. It requires self-reflection, discipline, emotional healing, and a commitment to growth. But as you embrace the discomfort of maturity, you will discover a deeper sense of freedom, one that comes from knowing and accepting yourself, and from taking full responsibility for your life and your choices. When we ignore the psychological and emotional processes required for maturation, the consequences can be far-reaching, both on a personal and societal level. The man-child is not just someone who refuses to take on responsibility. He is someone whose resistance to growth subtly but profoundly shapes his entire life. His relationships, his career, his sense of self, all are affected by his refusal or inability to step into the fullness of adulthood. But it doesn't stop there. There is also an emotional cost, a kind of quiet suffering that results from living in a state of arrested development. The personal cost, stunted identity, and the absence of meaning. At the heart of the man-child's experience is a deep sense of identity confusion. He may hold a job, maintain friendships, and even get into relationships, but at his core, he struggles to define who he truly is. The lack of a clear, grounded identity often manifests in insecurity, confusion, and a deep sense of emotional isolation. This is the first significant consequence, the absence of meaning. When a man refuses to embrace maturity, he is also rejecting the deeper layers of life that bring meaning, commitment, responsibility, sacrifice, and the process of becoming. Without these, life feels like an endless cycle of distractions and superficial engagements. There's no anchor. The man-child drifts through life, seeking quick fixes or new distractions to fill the void. The emptiness grows, and the cycle deepens, leaving him emotionally exhausted and spiritually unsatisfied. This is why so many men who live in a state of arrested development feel a sense of inner chaos. They may not be consciously aware of this, but it's there. The internal conflict between their unconscious desire for freedom and the need to grow, the struggle to reconcile their youthful idealism with the demands of maturity, creates a psychological tension that they can't escape. Without addressing this tension, the man-child ends up trapped in a perpetual loop of dissatisfaction and inner fragmentation. The relational impact. Emotional immaturity in relationships. Perhaps the most visible consequences of the man-child syndrome are seen in relationships. In the absence of emotional maturity, relationships with partners, friends, and even family members suffer. The man-child often fails to form deep, lasting connections because he is unwilling or unable to be emotionally vulnerable. He may hide behind humor, detachment, or avoidance, never fully letting others in. His relationships are characterized by superficiality. He seeks out companionship and love, but his inability to mature emotionally prevents him from truly giving or receiving it. This emotional immaturity can manifest in several ways. In romantic relationships, the man-child may exhibit commitment issues, running from serious discussions or refusing to take on the responsibilities that come with long-term partnerships. He may be prone to passive-aggressive behavior or emotional outbursts when things get too real. The fear of failure and inadequacy that lies beneath his resistance to responsibility becomes magnified in relationships, where the stakes feel higher. He may sabotage what could otherwise be healthy, fulfilling partnerships simply because he's not ready or is too afraid to face his deeper fears of emotional intimacy. Moreover, the man-child may find himself in toxic cycles, continually attracting partners who try to fix or mother him, reinforcing the very pattern of immaturity that keeps him stuck. Over time, this dynamic breeds resentment, frustration, and exhaustion, both for him and for those who love him. The cycle perpetuates itself, and the man-child is left wondering why, despite his best efforts, he can never seem to find true emotional fulfillment. This relational stagnation extends to friendships as well. The man-child often gravitates toward friendships that reinforce his identity as someone who is still fun and youthful. He may surround himself with people who, like him, avoid the responsibilities of maturity. But these relationships, built on shared immaturity, are ultimately hollow. They fail to provide the emotional depth, mutual support, and personal growth that true friendship can offer. Instead, they become another distraction from the deeper work of self-discovery. Career and personal growth, the cost of avoidance. The career of the man-child is often a reflection of his psychological immaturity. He may bounce from job to job, never fully committing to any one path or project. His creativity may shine, but his follow-through is inconsistent. He might start projects with enthusiasm, only to abandon them when the initial excitement wanes. The man-child may convince himself that he is simply waiting for the right opportunity, or that he doesn't fit into the system. But deep down, he is avoiding the hard work and discipline that are required for true professional growth. This avoidance of commitment and responsibility can stunt his career progression. He may never fully realize his potential because he is unwilling to make the sacrifices and take the risks that success often requires. The deeper problem is that he never truly believes in his own worth. The man-child doubts his ability to succeed and constantly fears being exposed as inadequate. This fear keeps him from taking the necessary steps to build a career that is meaningful and stable. At the same time, the man-child may experience profound dissatisfaction in his professional life. Without a sense of purpose or a clear path forward, work becomes a source of frustration rather than fulfillment. He feels disconnected from the value of what he's doing, as though his efforts are in vain. His professional life becomes a means to an end, a way to pay the bills, but not a source of meaning or personal satisfaction. The impact on mental health, loneliness, anxiety, and depression. The emotional and relational consequences of the man-child's inability to mature also take a toll on his mental health. The sense of confusion, isolation, and frustration that accompanies the refusal to grow up often leads to feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. The man-child may not understand why he feels so lost or disconnected, but the lack of meaning, the avoidance of responsibility, and the inability to connect with others on a deep level create a profound emotional emptiness. Anxiety, in particular, is a common companion for the man-child. He may worry constantly about his future, about his lack of direction, or about the potential fallout from his immaturity. His inability to face his fears directly leads to a kind of emotional paralysis. He avoids the hard work of growing, which results in more internal anxiety as his psyche becomes increasingly fractured and unbalanced. Depression, too, is a real risk. The man-child, while often charming and externally vibrant, carries a quiet sadness. It is the sadness of potential unfulfilled, of dreams left behind, of self-worth in question. Over time, this sadness can turn into a pervasive feeling of hopelessness. He may feel like he is wasting his life, but be unsure of how to change. The emotional weight of this internal conflict can lead to depression, often deepening as he avoids confronting the root cause of his dissatisfaction. Historical parallels: myth, literature, and the eternal return. Interestingly, we see similar patterns reflected in historical myths, literature, and even religious texts. Consider the myth of Peter Pan, the quintessential man-child who refuses to grow up, forever flying in Neverland, avoiding the responsibilities of the adult world. Peter Pan's refusal to mature leads to perpetual instability, an inability to form lasting connections, and ultimately, an emptiness that nothing in Neverland can fill. In ancient myths, we also see archetypes of the hero who must leave behind the comforts of childhood to face the trials of life. The hero's journey is, in part, about maturity, about accepting responsibility, embracing the unknown, and transcending the limitations of youth. This journey was understood as essential for personal growth and the development of wisdom. For the man-child, however, the journey remains stalled. He is caught in an emotional limbo, a cycle of avoiding growth and rejecting adulthood. Like the mythological figures who refuse to mature, he faces the same inevitable consequence: an unfulfilled life. As we've explored, the consequences of remaining in a state of emotional and psychological immaturity are far-reaching, affecting identity, relationships, career, and overall well-being. But while the man-child's struggle may seem insurmountable, it is by no means hopeless. Transformation, growth, and maturity are always possible. What's needed is not a sudden, drastic change, but a gradual journey, a process of embracing responsibility, confronting fears, and cultivating emotional maturity. Let's explore the practical tools, habits, and mindset shifts that can help break the cycle of immaturity and guide a man into the fullness of adulthood. Embracing responsibility. The foundation of growth. The first and most essential step in overcoming the man-child mentality is learning to embrace responsibility. For many men, the fear of responsibility is overwhelming. But responsibility is not just a burden, it is a means of self-empowerment. Taking responsibility for one's life means taking ownership of decisions, actions, and outcomes. It means no longer relying on others to fix problems or shield you from the consequences of your choices. To begin this process, start small. Begin by setting clear, manageable goals that force you to engage with responsibility. Whether it's taking ownership of your finances, committing to a job or project, or even organizing your living space. These small acts of responsibility create a sense of achievement and control. Over time, these actions build confidence, helping to reframe responsibility as a tool for growth rather than something to be feared. Next, embrace the fact that mistakes will be made. Maturity is not about avoiding failure. It is about learning to grow through failure. In this way, each failure becomes an opportunity for growth, not a reason to run away. The key is to stop avoiding difficult situations and face them with courage and integrity. Developing emotional awareness. From avoidance to engagement. For the man-child, emotional avoidance is a key defense mechanism that perpetuates immaturity. Whether it's avoiding tough conversations, suppressing emotions, or distracting oneself with escapist behaviors, the avoidance of emotional discomfort prevents growth. To overcome this, one must begin to develop emotional awareness. Start by paying attention to your emotional responses throughout the day. Whenever you feel triggered, whether by anger, fear, or sadness, take a moment to pause and reflect. What is the root cause of this emotion? Are you avoiding something? Are you afraid of facing the consequences of your actions? Journaling can be a powerful tool here. Writing about your emotions not only helps you process them, but also allows you to track patterns in your behavior. Over time, you may begin to notice areas of your life where you've been avoiding responsibility or shying away from deeper emotional engagement. Therapy and counseling can also be valuable resources. A skilled therapist can help you unpack emotional avoidance, understand the sources of your fears, and develop healthy coping mechanisms. Therapy can guide you through the process of emotional integration, helping you to accept and express your feelings in healthy, constructive ways. Cultivating emotional intelligence. Building healthy relationships. A critical part of maturing emotionally is learning to build deeper, more meaningful relationships. Emotional intelligence, EQ, the ability to understand, manage, and use emotions effectively, is vital for connecting with others in a mature way. High EQ allows a person to navigate the complexities of relationships with empathy, communication, and authenticity. For the man-child, cultivating emotional intelligence means learning to be vulnerable. It means showing up fully in relationships, whether with friends, family, or romantic partners, and allowing yourself to experience the full spectrum of emotions. Vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. It takes courage to open up and share your feelings, especially when you fear judgment or rejection. Start by practicing active listening. When you engage with others, listen attentively, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Try to understand their perspective and allow yourself to empathize with their emotions. This creates deeper emotional bonds and encourages more open, honest communication. Another crucial aspect of emotional intelligence is learning to set boundaries. The man-child often has trouble with boundaries, whether it's taking on too much responsibility, letting others walk all over him, or avoiding conflict at all costs. But boundaries are essential for healthy relationships and personal growth. By learning to set and enforce boundaries, you show respect for yourself and for others, and you take responsibility for your emotional well-being. Building discipline. Developing the skill of consistency. The man-child often struggles with consistency and follow-through, whether in his work, relationships, or personal goals. Building discipline is a critical step in maturing. Discipline is the bridge between potential and accomplishment. It is what allows us to turn dreams into reality. Begin by developing a daily routine. Structure creates stability and reduces the chaos that often accompanies the man-child's life. Start with small habits that you can commit to each day, whether it's waking up early, exercising regularly, or dedicating time to personal development. Over time, these small habits will build the momentum needed to tackle bigger challenges. Discipline also involves setting clear, long-term goals. Without a clear sense of direction, it's easy to remain adrift. Take time to reflect on what you truly want out of life and set concrete, achievable goals that align with your values. Whether it's advancing in your career, building meaningful relationships, or pursuing a creative passion, discipline will be the tool that helps you stay focused and on track. Remember, discipline is not about perfection. It's about consistency. Even on days when you fall short, continue showing up. Consistency over time is what transforms a man-child into a mature, responsible adult. Embracing growth, the lifelong journey. Finally, maturity is not a destination, but a lifelong journey. It is a continual process of self-reflection, learning, and growth. The key is to embrace this journey rather than resist it. The man-child's fear of aging, responsibility, and commitment can be transformed into a deep respect for the ongoing process of becoming. Start viewing growth as a process of unfolding rather than achieving a final goal. Every challenge, every mistake, and every moment of discomfort is part of the larger tapestry of personal development. Instead of running from the inevitable challenges of life, meet them with curiosity and resilience. Understand that every step you take toward maturity is a step toward greater freedom and self-realization. Growth is also about embracing your imperfections. The journey of maturity does not require perfection, but rather a willingness to engage with life authentically. It means accepting that you will not always get it right, but you will continue to learn, adapt, and evolve. This is a journey we must take one step at a time. It's a path full of challenges, but also one full of profound rewards, a deeper sense of self, stronger relationships, and a richer, more meaningful life. The man-child may struggle, but through courage, discipline, and self-awareness, he can become the man he was always meant to be. The journey from man-child to fully realized adult is not one that is completed overnight. It is a journey that requires patience, reflection, and, above all, commitment to growth. As we've explored, the man-child is not merely a person who refuses to accept responsibility. He is a reflection of a deeper, more universal struggle. The struggle between remaining in the comfort of adolescence and stepping into the discomfort of maturity. The path toward adulthood is not without its obstacles. The man-child resists growth because it demands vulnerability, emotional honesty, and a willingness to face the darker aspects of the self. Maturity requires us to confront our fears, to accept failure, and to take ownership of our lives in ways that can be uncomfortable, even terrifying. Yet, it is in this very discomfort that true growth lies. This journey toward maturity is, in essence, a journey toward self-realization. It is about understanding who you are, what you truly want, and how to step into the world with authenticity, integrity, and purpose. Maturity is not simply about taking on more responsibilities. It is about taking responsibility for the most important thing in your life, yourself. It is important to remember that this process is not linear. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, and challenges along the way. But each of these moments is an opportunity for growth. The key is to be compassionate with yourself and to understand that growth is not about perfection, but progress. The man-child may falter, but if he continues on the path of self-awareness and development, he will slowly begin to transform. Perhaps the most essential takeaway from this exploration is that maturity is not the end of freedom. It is its beginning. By embracing responsibility, emotional intelligence, and self-discipline, a man frees himself from the chaos and confusion of perpetual adolescence. He gains access to a deeper, more fulfilling form of freedom. The freedom to create the life he truly desires, the freedom to engage fully in relationships, and the freedom to live authentically, without the burden of unresolved emotional conflicts. The challenge, then, is not to seek out a life of eternal youth or to avoid the weight of responsibility. The challenge is to move through life with courage, to take responsibility for our emotional and psychological growth, and to embrace the discomfort of becoming. What does it mean to truly grow up? It means stepping into the fullness of who you are, no longer hiding behind distractions or fears, but facing life head-on with all its complexities. It means understanding that growth is not about age, but about awareness and engagement. To grow up is not to abandon the joy of life's youthfulness, but to integrate it into a mature, balanced self. It is about learning that true freedom comes not from evading the challenges of life, but from fully embracing them. So, to the man-child who may be reading these words, know that it is never too late to start. The journey may be long and the road may be tough, but the rewards of becoming who you truly are, authentically, fully, and with all the courage you can muster, are worth every step. The question remains, what will you do next? Will you continue to avoid the responsibility that calls to you, or will you take that first courageous step toward the man you are destined to become? The decision is in your hands, and with it, the power to shape your future. It's time to step into the fullness of life, to leave behind the comfort of childhood, and to embrace the transformative power of maturity. As we close this exploration of the man-child and the path to maturity, I want to leave you with a powerful thought. Growth is a continuous journey. It's a journey that requires courage, self-awareness, and an unwavering commitment to becoming the best version of yourself. It's about stepping into the life that you truly desire, not one dictated by fear, avoidance, or emotional immaturity, but one built on responsibility, emotional intelligence, and self-discipline. If you've resonated with any part of this message, whether it's the struggle, the challenge, or the call to take responsibility for your life, then you are already on the path to becoming who you are meant to be. But it doesn't stop here. This is only the beginning. If you're ready to continue this journey with me, if you're eager to explore more deep, reflective content that helps you grow emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, then I invite you to subscribe. This is a space where we don't shy away from the hard truths. We face them, we learn from them, and we use them to become better, more complete versions of ourselves. By subscribing, you'll gain access to future videos that blend deep psychological insights, historical wisdom, and practical tools for personal growth. We'll continue to dive into the complexities of the human experience, whether it's understanding the deeper dynamics of relationships, exploring powerful philosophical ideas, or learning how to master our emotional intelligence. But this space is more than just a channel. It's a community of people who are committed to growth, who are ready to reflect, to challenge themselves, and to make real change in their lives. If you're tired of superficial content and are looking for something more meaningful, something that speaks to your deeper sense of purpose, then you've found the right place. So, if you're ready to take the next step toward emotional and psychological freedom, to embrace your potential and reclaim your power, hit that subscribe button. Let's continue this journey together. Because when we grow, we don't just change ourselves. We change the world around us. Are you ready to grow up? Let's make it happen. Together.